Shabbat Shalom. One of my favorite journalists who writes about Israel for the Times of Israel, a website that my wife says I am addicted to, is David Horowitz. He's the editor of Times of Israel, and I knew him from when I was called up to interview for a position at the Jerusalem Post years ago when I was still working as a journalist. And so I find him to be very insightful, and especially during the judicial overhaul, his pieces were really very inspiring and moving and powerful. And after October 7th, his columns have been very difficult to read. I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but he's been the glass half empty, very much a rock bottom view, no sugarcoating whatsoever of what's happening in Gaza and in the whole war. And when you were hearing from other sources, well, everything is going well, he was the one who was saying, well, there's still 2/3, 3/4 of the war to go, and still many more fights and battles and militants, and they're still fighting rockets at central Israel. Week after week, his columns were rock bottom view of the situation, and difficult, again, as I said, to read. A few weeks ago, when there was the operation that assassinated the deputy leader of Hamas in Lebanon, he said, well, at least it shows that they're capable of gathering some intelligence the way they used to be able to, and that the army is showing that they have some ability to act in more active ways. So his columns were finding depressing, but I also found that they played a part because they told me what was really happening, and they gave a sense of what needed to happen and of the slow path ahead out of this horrible, intractable situation with such horrific circumstances for everybody, including the civilians in Gaza. But there had to be, it was a slow process of plodding on. No TikTok moments for the IDF in this very difficult situation, but real life. And as we count, as Alan says, 100 days into this conflict, maybe this is a moment where that vision is important, of step by step, plodding on to try and find the way through everything that's happening. One of my favorite stories from the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, is he speaks of two men, a story told of two friends who each planted a field of wheat. One of them had a large field, and the other of them had a small field. So the owner of the big field, he went around very confident in what was going to happen with his big field. He went down to the tavern, and he had a good time, and he went to see his friends and didn't pay much attention to his field. And because he knew, I'm going to get a great harvest, I have this amazing field. And the owner of the little field, who was more nervous about what was going to happen and concerned about the tiny crop, went down every hour down to the field and every day and checking on the plants hours after hour and pulling out the weeds and giving anything that would help aid the growth. And so we know what happened in the end. The large field came out sickly and the harvest was poor, and people broke down the wall and came and took the wheat, while the small field flourished and gave a beautiful and bountiful harvest. So the Baal Shem Tov used to tell the story to say that anything in life that's big takes a lot of time and perseverance and work to be able to achieve it, a lot of attention and focus and dedication. And so this is true of the intractable situation in Israel and the wider objective of reaching peace, and the global case against Israel that we saw coming to international media this week at The Hague that's been building for decades, and many other things, all in our lives as well. That to accomplish anything of worth takes a lot of energy and a long time. A few months ago, I was watching on the computer with my daughter. We were watching gymnasts, and you watch the gymnasts and their beautiful flips and everything they do. They make it look so easy and seamless. And I was looking at Shalva, and I said, well, it takes a little effort to get to that place. And not long after, she started doing cartwheels, which she didn't know how to do. Over 2 weeks, she did about 1,000 cartwheels. All the time, wherever we were. We were on a trip, in places I'd rather her not do a cartwheel, in the airport, in the desert, and all these different places she was doing cartwheels. For over 3 weeks, after doing all these cartwheels, I can say her cartwheels were truly beautiful, a work of art. She managed to master the cartwheel. And it was amazing to see how they developed and her perseverance, cartwheel after cartwheel after cartwheel. In our parsha this week, the story of the plagues. God appears to Moses and Aaron and says, I'm going to be taking you out of Egypt, the fourfold promise. I'll be taking you out with a mighty hand, and I will come and deliver you amid wonders and miracles, and I will take you to the promised land. And we still remember this fourfold promise because we drink 4 cups of wine on Pesach, on Passover. And so you could imagine if you were an Israelite, in this situation, and you hear God says that, you think, well, God's going to come with his hand and pick me up and put me somewhere else. But it didn't quite happen that way. It took, because we were saying, the Midrash says it took a whole year to make it happen. We can imagine how long that year felt to them. And when we read it, it's hard not to see how perfect that process appears from our point of view. How over the course of that whole year, God slowly took away the confidence of the Egyptians in their might and in their righteousness. First, the magicians are able to replicate all of the plagues, but then as the plagues advance, soon they say, Pharaoh, I can't do this, let the people go. When they have boils on their faces, they say, let the people go. And how all of the different plagues were different symbols for the might of Egypt, or for their gods perhaps. The Nile, of course, the symbol, source of life, but the frogs, and then all of it as it developed, and more as God started to protect the Israelites in their little area. And then, of course, Pharaoh's heart, the most powerful symbol of the process that's happening, where God was slowly going through what was needed for the Israelites to understand slowly they were being redeemed and freedom was coming, and for the Egyptians to go through the process of seeing the futility of what they were doing and how they were seeing the process. And of course, as we talk about every year, this continues into the manna and how they're being fed manna every day in the desert to take away that slave mentality of hoarding and everything that happened, all a perfect process. But we often think about, well, what were the children of Israel thinking as they were going through this? What was as they were witnessing this and didn't know what was coming next? What was going on in there for Moses during that long year? So this is it, right? A person who sticks to it and perseveres, who nourishes what they're trying to do and puts their energies into it, whether it's their personal life, the great challenges we all face, eventually they reach the other side. And it applies also to our congregation, and to every congregation we're looking to sow in all the different areas to make change and to bring about a new spirit, as we're going to try next week with our services and bringing a different experience for Shabbat mornings. Everything takes that perseverance and that time and energy. And with the horrible situation in Gaza, we truly hope to pray for everyone that a new reality will somehow emerge out of all of it, that will allow peace and for all to live and find a new beginning and to flourish. And that peace, when it comes, as hard-earned as it will truly be a moment of transformation. Shabbat Shalom.